Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to our part two. Let's talk financial planning, investing. We're truly excited to have our guest speaker here, Gregory Brown. Once again, he spoke last week. He's going to speak next week, and he's also going to have a phenomenal amount of financial education for us today. We didn't get the opportunity to properly introduce him because we just kind of excitedly started our information, but he's going to give me the pleasure to do it right now. And here we go. Gregory Brown earned his undergrad degree from Northern Arizona University and also received his graduate degree from Central Michigan University. Shortly after earning his undergrad degree, he commissioned in the United States Army as an officer, and he honorably served nearly a decade. As his family grew, his priorities began to shift. The importance of family became top priority. He has always had a strong calling to serve his communities, thus his financial career was born. Since that day, he has had the opportunity to serve many clientele within his community and coast to coast within the United States. He and his team serve to continue he and his team have strived to continue to serve his community and extend their influences. The feedback that they receive from their clientele has been vital to their growth and also is a direct reflection of their commitment. Before assisting their clientele, Mr. Brown and his team strives to establish a relationship to provide comfort and his clients before his clients began to share and entrust their success of their dreams and goals with them. Without further ado, I would like to have Mr. Brown to begin to educate us about financial investing, planning, generational wealth. It's over to you.
Well, definitely appreciate that, ma'am. And you're absolutely right. Last time we were very eager. We jumped right on into it. So I definitely appreciate the warm welcome. Now, first and foremost, I definitely want to appreciate everybody for coming out and spending time. As was mentioned earlier, I am a financial representative with Northwestern Mutual, and I've been doing this for quite some time now. But before we dive into it, I definitely want to ensure that we lay some ground rules. Like, there's no dumb questions, and it's a judgment-free zone here. So in the event that you have any questions, by all means, feel free to either interrupt me during this or, feel free to mention it in the chat. But yeah, whenever they pop up, feel free to let them go, okay? And I intend for this to be interactive. So by all means, this presentation is stacked up to be roughly about an hour and a half, but if it goes longer, that's cool too. I have no problem with that. All right, so with that being said, we're going to roll right on into it. Now, when you think about your future, what do you see? An exciting career, maybe owning a business of your own, traveling, a house full of kids, grandkids, a comfortable retirement? What's that look like for you?
Well, I would say my future. My future looks like me building more for more, which is my baby, to the next level, collaborating with other individuals, other organizations, to not do it all by myself and try to create the wheel, but reinvent the wheel, and make sure that I have financial success. Having a nonprofit, I always believe that, or what was taught was like, you don't make money, you're just like, yeah. So with that being said, I have did my research. I'm still doing my research, and I've discovered that I can make this out of a career, and I can be successful with it. So my financial success is what I can see in the future within the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, awesome. Good. And to be honest, I mean, we all have our own unique hopes and dreams for the future. But no matter what our financial goals are, we are responsible for taking the steps in order to achieve them. So essentially, how do we make that happen? It happens through effective planning. Now, it's just a question for everybody that's tuning in so far. How many of you currently have a plan or a roadmap in place to reach your financial goals? What about you? I believe it's Aisha.
Yeah, correct. Thank you for saying my name right.
Yeah, not a problem.
I think for me, the current plans, I think focus more so on like being very disciplined and saving. I think that is for me the biggest step towards reaching my financial goals right now. And so making sure that I'm just really disciplined and focused on saving and reaching my like monthly targets. And so, I mean, it's going well. And I think um, the key has just been like I said, discipline, but also just being realistic about, budgeting and spending wisely. And so that's for me been helping to kind of like really reach my financial goals and staying on track with that. So,
Okay, good. And if you don't mind me asking, how did you come across those goals?
the goals for saving.
Well, just any of them that you're striving to achieve.
How did I come across them?
Yeah, like were they meaningful to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think any goal that I set essentially is due to um, a change that I want to see in my life. And so typically when I set a goal, I set it because I want to see improvement or I want to grow, progress. So just like, yeah, any goal that I set is essentially like set so that I can just propel myself forward.
All right, great, great. Thanks for sharing. And honestly, that's what all your goals should be. They should definitely be a stepping stone to where you essentially want to end up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't currently have a plan, pretty much to help you reach your financial goals, you're not alone. Understand, here at Northwestern Mutual, we conducted a study, and of the people we interviewed, roughly 1 in 4 stated that the number one roadblock to their financial planning was due to a lack of time. Okay. For some people, spending more time researching what kind of TV to buy is more important than creating a plan. And yet by having a plan, it's really the first step you could take to make sure that your dreams for the future become a reality. Now, today, my goal is to help you identify how you could start planning your path to financial security so that you and your family could envision, essentially live that life that you want to instead of the one that you have to. So we're going to dive right on into it. Now, by all means, like I mentioned before, please, if you have any questions or need any clarification on anything we go over, by all means, ask or put it in the chat. I'll do my best to refer back to both. So what's involved in creating a financial security? Like, what is it? There are 5 key actions, and these apply no matter how old you are, how much money you have, or what goals you have in the future. First one, you want to save. The second, we want to spend. The third, we want to grow. Fourth, protect. And fifth, give. Now, you may pay more attention to one portion of this plan over another, and it could change year to year. But the ultimate goal is to have a balance among all 5. So let's dive into one in just a little more detail, starting with save. So it's important to build up savings to cover life goals and surprises, right? Basically helping you afford the life tomorrow today. Now, the question there is, how much do we really need? To determine that amount, it's really important to answer some questions. Case in point, where do you want to be tomorrow? What are some of your goals? It's just not enough to say, I have a great job, I raise a family, and be happy. You got to be specific to where you want to see yourself. So essentially you need to do something to the lines of, within the next 10 years, me and my wife want to move with the kids down to New Mexico, in which we're going to build the house we always wanted since we got married, and then open up a bakery to essentially show the kids essentially the line of business prior to them going to college. That level of detail is needed. And really to help, kind of along the lines of where Aisha pretty much was going, what does some of your future looks like in the next 5 to 10 years, or even 30 years from now? What about you, Zaria? What's your future long term look like?
Well, my future long term looks like let's see, having a house, with like kids, being able to travel the world and like buy stuff that I want, just like shoes or clothes.
Okay. All right, good. So anything in particular that you could have over the other, like if you had to prioritize them?
Probably the clothes.
Okay.
Because I'm like 20, so we need
Okay.
a house.
I mean, and that's fair, right? Because your age has a lot to do with the way you see life. So that's perfect, and that's okay, right? Everybody's financial plan is going to be different and unique based on them. So that's perfectly okay. But, well, there's really no but to that. But to be specific, unless you get down to a level of detail about your goals, you won't necessarily know over time if you financially have essentially the assets to accomplish them. And if you're married, you definitely want to talk about those goals to your spouse, just to ensure that you guys are on the same page. Now, clear goals serve as a motivator to build those savings and help resist you from dipping into them just because of a whim. Now, so let's say it like this. How much should you be putting away into savings and investments? Generally speaking, you should allocate about 20% of your income. But in reality, the amount you should be saving really depends on the goals we just talked about. Pretty much, that 20% is a guideline, right? Like for Zaria, clothes might not necessarily need the full 20% of your income, but for Aisha, you might need 40 or 50% in order to pretty much accomplish the same thing. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't matter how careful you are when you plan your finances. There will always be an unexpected expense, whether that's car repairs, vet bills, or a trip to the ER. Life is unpredictable. And that's why we should try to incorporate an emergency fund. The general guideline is that you should keep an equivalent of roughly 6 months of expenses on hand, just so that you could access it at any time. And by having that bit of cushion when you need it, essentially what you could do is you could avoid using a high interest credit card to cover that expense. And when it comes to saving, the sooner the better. And here's why. So you start with $1,000, just for sake, for the sake of example, right? We start with $1,000 and we contribute an additional $100 every month. And based on a 6% rate of return on your savings investment, essentially over the course of 10 years, you could essentially make around $18,000. Now, if you leave that money undisrupted and continue to contribute $100 over the next 20 years, that will quickly exceed 48,000. Well, it'll be closer to 50 really, but in the next 30 years, it'll definitely eclipse 100 grand. And basically the key for that is not so much the amount of money that you invest, it's the time. And that's why it's so important to get on investing early, because time is the catalyst. So did I hear a question in the background? No? Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's say a few decades to retirement, right? Let's just level the playing field. During this time in your life, your goal will be essentially making your money last as long as you do. And even though that may be a way longer time frame, or just, well, let's just say everybody's ages are different. So regardless of what that is, it's never too early to begin to familiarize yourself with the things that you'll be needing, or just thinking as far as finances during that time of your, essentially that stage in your life. So let me ask you this question. It's pretty much to the group. How long do you think you'll live? What about you, Aisha? Aisha, excuse me. Late 80s, okay.
I would probably say, yeah, probably late 80s, early 90s, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So hold that thought, okay? Late 80s, early 90s. Okay. You might be surprised, just for the simple fact that if you're a man, there's a 50% chance that you'll live beyond the age of 88, okay? If you're a woman, there's a 50% chance that you'll live well beyond the age of 90. And if you're married, there's a 50% chance that your spouse will live well beyond the age of 94. Now, what that means for you is that you may live 30 more years, or you could say 30 plus years, depending on how old you are now, in retirement, okay? Pension plans are scarce, they're a rarity, like even the military is going away from those. And with medical and healthcare expenses on the rise, we have to definitely plan for them, especially since the rate of inflation just continues to go on. It's almost like a double whammy, right? So Social Security, yeah, it should be there and may be able to help pay for some of your retirement expenses, but honestly, Social Security is set to run out in like 2069, right? The amount that you will have access to is really unknown. But as with today, it won't be enough in itself. So we definitely have to make the most of the money that we saved and put a plan together for you through retirement so you could enjoy it well. Because if you just stop and think about it, like it's roughly $225,000, $225,000 to raise a child from birth to 18. And essentially we're going to double that in retirement. And things are just, they're not going to stop growing. The cost of living is going to continue to grow. So it's definitely something that we want to start looking at early, or better yet, sooner than later. Any questions so far? No, none taken. Okay. So where should you be saving your money? Here's a rundown of the most common types of saving and other investment vehicles. Now, of course, there's a traditional savings account at the bank, credit union. We're pretty familiar with those, right? And then there's bonds. And bonds are companies and governments that issue pretty much they issue bonds to fund day-to-day operations or to finance specific jobs. You know, when you buy a bond, you're essentially loaning your money for a certain period of time to the issuer. In return, you'll get back that original loaned amount plus interest. Okay, so it's definitely not a bad option. Along with mutual funds, pretty much those are things that pool your money together from thousands of small investors, and then the bond manager, or correction, the fund manager buys stocks and bonds or other securities with it. And when you contribute your money to a fund, you essentially get a stake in all the investments that it has. And since most mutual funds allow you to begin investing with as little as like $2,000, $1,000, some even as low as $250 a month, you could attain a well-diversified portfolio with far much less capital if you were to buy an individual stock or bond, okay? And then in terms of saving for retirement, if you work and your employer offers you a 401k, it's a great vehicle to use, especially if they have a matching contribution, like, what's the word I'm looking for? A matching contribution allocation to it as well, because your contributions are going to grow pre-tax and tax deferred. And honestly, like if your employer offers you that matching or that company match, it's essentially just free money you're leaving on the table. You definitely don't want to do that. And then there's many different types of IRAs and Roth IRAs, and they both serve a distinctive purpose. You know, essentially a Roth IRA is like more so the new school retirement. And basically what I mean by that is those individuals with Roth IRAs tend to have a more luxurious retirement plan, i.e. they're living their best life, they're traveling. Essentially their expenses are going up in retirement. Now, traditional IRAs are more so old school retirement plans. You know, essentially those individuals are, you know, they're happy in life. You know, all they want to do is sit outside on the front porch, watch sunrise and sunset, essentially have dwindling liabilities in retirement. And, you know, both work for different people, but serve a very distinctive purpose. Now, hopefully nobody's surprised to see we definitely have to spend, right? But to be completely frank with you, it's really nothing to be surprised about, because planning and managing expenses is essential for your financial success. By spending wisely, you can afford the things you need and help eliminate debts like student loans and credit cards, and still have cash available for you to buy what you want. So you need to create a budget to help you handle what's coming in, what's going out, and what your essential expenses are, you know, like your must-haves versus your discretionary spending, i.e., you know, the things that you want. Now, how many of you, like, be honest, track all your expenses?
I will honestly say I used to be on top of that. Life changes, so I know I could do better, but pretty much I do keep track of it on my own.
Okay. And I see in the chat, not as often as I should. I do not. Okay. Well, better yet, how many of you wish you had a better handle on where your money goes every month? It's a good question too. I'm sure we all wanted to have a better handle on where our money goes, right? Definitely do, yeah, absolutely. So really the solution to all that is to establish a detailed monthly budget. So how do you do that? One simple guideline that I typically tend to show all my clients is a 20-60-20 rule. And basically what that breaks down is 20% of your income should be set aside each month for saving and investing to help ensure a more secure financial future. You should pay yourself first and spend what's left rather than saving only what's left after your monthly spending, okay? You should save this into multiple different types of accounts to give yourself the financial flexibility in the future. And the 60% of your income should be less, I guess you could say, should only be spent on essential expenses. Things like housing, transportation, food, childcare, insurance, pretty much any debt payments, such as student loans or credit card balances. That's where you should allocate a majority of your funds. And then 20% of your income should be spent on discretionary things. These are things like household, personal items, clothes, personal care, charitable contributions, or any extra, payments that you want to put on top of like debt or anything like that should come from this 20%.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So for those individuals who have not begun to start their families or they're in college, what advice would you give them? Because I know sometimes with some of our savers, our clients and individuals that we interact with don't look at their money as, not saying it's not important, but usually like when you're in college, you looked at like your refund check or your work study check as just like money you're getting, you're just trying to survive. How do you budget that? Like, what does that look like for like a college student or someone who doesn't have the responsibilities of someone that has already started their family?
Great question. Okay, so what I would do is I would challenge that individual, especially the college student, to, no kidding, sit down and see where they see themselves after college, and then start allocating funds towards that goal. So let's say you're a lawyer and you know that you have an aspiration of owning your own firm, or even something simpler than that, driving your own car. Or let's say you don't want to live in the city, you want to be able to buy a house in the suburbs. Definitely put some funds away for that to help you accomplish that. Because like we alluded to earlier, it's not the amount of money that you start saving towards your future, it's the time that goes with that. So the earlier you're able to start, especially if you're in college, the better. And then you could break it down as something really simple, like if you're going to college for business, well, essentially you want to do something afterwards, right? So whatever that is, whether it's you want to start your own Foot Locker or you want to go into business for yourself, or whatever you're majoring in, I would definitely allocate some funds for that. And then you could break it down once that part, like once the long range goals are out of the way, then make it more simpler. As in, next week, I want to have an additional $20 or an additional $10 tomorrow, or, give yourself a daily savings goal, whether it's $5 a day or whatever it may be. But definitely I would challenge that college individual, because whether it's a refund check or work study, if you're not going to school on a full ride, there's going to come a time in which you have to pay that back. And it's a lot easier knowing that you have money to pay something back than not having the money and having the stress to work for it. So that's just some of the things that I would urge a college student to, no kidding, sit down and work, because after college, it's real life. Like there's no do-overs at that point. But great question. So generally speaking, that's what you want to shoot for. How do we get there? Let's start by listing everything out. No kidding. Let's take an honest inventory of the ways you're pretty much spending your money. We're going to review your debts, your credit card statements, checkbooks, automatic drafts. And one of the key things, especially for college kids, that I notice is a forgotten thing, are subscriptions. you'll be really surprised at how much money you throw away on subscriptions that you don't use anymore, especially if they're automatically drafted. Whether it's YouTube, Netflix, Spotify, iHeart, it doesn't matter. If you don't use a lot of these subscriptions on a daily, you'll tend to forget about them. And trust me, they're not forgetting about you. They're still drafting that money. And by all means, keep receipts from everything. Do this for 3 months or so and get a picture of where all your money is going. And don't forget to omit certain bills, the ones that, like I mentioned, your subscriptions that might happen every month, or maybe even an insurance payment that happens every 6 months. You don't want to forget those either. Or even the cost of traveling, like whatever you want to do, like cost of entertainment, you want to put all that into your budget so that you can have, no kidding, a real hold on your lifestyle so that you can maintain it. Now, once you see what's going out compared to what's coming in, if your monthly expenses exceed your income, you're going to need to adjust. Sorry, just got a pop-up. Thank you for the tech investment. Yep. But as far as like your monthly expenses, if they exceed what's coming in, you'll definitely need to adjust your spending and prioritize your discretionary expenses, and maybe even eliminate or reduce some of them just based on what's most important to you. And if you have a lot of debt, paying more than just a monthly premium, monthly benefit, or monthly minimum, there you go, sorry, tongue twister, will pretty much set you aside for success and set you ahead of the deadlines for paying them off. Now, beyond simply saving, investing means putting a lot of your money into places where the value of it could change over time, okay? And the goal is always growth. Now, the thing about investing is that there's no guarantees of it. So understand the money that you plan on putting or investing away is money that you don't need or will need for whatever time horizon you're shooting for. So if you're that college student and you have 4 years left, the money that you don't need for the next 4 years is the money you want to be investing. It's not the money that you're going to need next month. Okay. Now, it's always great to start now, as early as possible, even if that means starting small. As I mentioned, if you invest nothing today, you're going to have nothing tomorrow. But if you start investing today, even just a little bit, a few dollars every week, you'll be accumulating wealth and taking advantage of the very uptick in performance and earning in the market due to interest. Now, different goals definitely have different time horizons. Just like everybody here, I'm sure there's a plethora of ages, so everybody's goals are going to be different. But for those long-term goals like retirement or even saving for college, you're probably going to need to make some choices about how the money that you set aside is going to be invested. And when investing, the market can fluctuate drastically, just like in today's market right now. One day it's up, one day it's crashing. It's really a day-to-day. It's very volatile at the moment. So you have to ask yourself, do you have the stomach to tolerate the ups and downs of the market? That's called your risk tolerance. And some people are very risk averse and some aren't. They're very aggressive. It all depends on the individual. And it's just as unique as that individual as well. Okay. But basically, you want to ask yourself, how much risk am I willing to take? Especially when it comes down to your money, right? How are you going to feel if you lose it? How many years will you need to invest it before you need it? And then once you've reached a certain point in the future, for how long are you going to be making that withdrawal? I.e., are you planning your investment? Are you planning to invest in your retirement accounts now? And really, this goes back to the question I asked you earlier. Like, how long do you plan on living? Better yet, how early do you plan on retiring? All these questions come into play that you really got to ask yourself. And by asking those questions, you'll have a much better sense of how to make your investment choices that are specifically right for you. And by working with a financial advisor, or even a financial professional for that matter, you could definitely see the help that we could bring to the table to help you see the big picture and determine which investment vehicle is right for you. Now, while your investment strategy, well, before I start there, does anybody have any questions up until this point? I feel like am I going too fast? I'm gonna take that as a no. Okay, so as far as asset allocation, while your investment strategy will be more specific to your situation, you'll want to plan to include a variety of investment types. You know, something we call asset allocation. Why? Generally because there's a lot of wisdom in the old adage. Basically, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I'm sure we could understand why, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not only financially smart, but it makes no sense logically. Every year, there are types of investments that do well, and there's some that don't do so well. But the trouble is, nobody really knows which one is really going to be that year's winner. So it's very important to help diversify yourself and spread yourself with several investments across the various asset classes. And of course, that means all your other investments won't necessarily be the best performers every year, but that also means they won't be the worst performers either. So it's really a way of managing risk. Okay, so here's what we covered so far. Why it's important to build up savings for today and your future, how to spend wisely by essentially starting a budget, to track your expenses and making adjustments to fit the 60-20-60 rule, and how to make your money work for you. No matter how much you have to grow or value over time, it's definitely looking into investing, essentially employing those dollars to effectively grow for you. Okay. Now, I want you to think about what would happen to your ability to reach those goals if you became sick, injured, or no longer able to work. I was going to say walk. No longer able to work, or better yet, even die. Now, of course, this isn't something that we want to think about, right? Especially on a weekend, right? Not to be a buzzkill or anything like that, but let's face it, the life you envision for yourself and your future family is really based on what you're earning right now, okay? Or in essentially what you expect to earn in the future. Now, imagine what would happen if you lost that earning potential. Make sure that you have a plan to help you protect it all. The money you already accumulated and the money you intend to make in the future. Now, there are three basic threats to your long-term ability to earn and protect your income: disability, long-term care, and death. Okay. A significant threat to your long-term ability to earn an income is disability. Now, unlike life insurance, only a minority of Americans will choose to purchase disability income insurance, in part because they don't realize how easy it is to become sick, injured, or for even a short period of time unable to work. Now, if you were to look outside our window right now to the current economic environment, you can see the pandemic has made that very, very clear, what it's like to be without an income for 8 months. And as you can see, it's almost total anarchy. So at a minimum, it makes sense to insure your monthly income. Now, most people think something catastrophic needs to happen in order for you to take advantage of disability income insurance. But the reality is, a majority of disabilities are caused by common everyday things. whether it's pregnancy, complications, cancer, heart attack, or even things that are, I guess you could say, less stressful, such as anxiety or depression. These are relatively common occurrences. In fact, during your most income producing years, you're more likely to become disabled than you are to die prematurely. So it's critical to protect your income, especially during those years, because once you retire, like it's a wrap. At that point in time, it's not like you're gonna go back into the workforce. I mean, even if you do, it's for a limited time, right? Because you just can't work as long or as hard. Physically, you can't do it. So you got to ensure that income that you're going to provide, essentially the nest egg for your retirement, is protected. It just makes sense. Any questions before we go on any further? Okay. Now, some of you have a group disability income insurance through your employer, and that's great. Don't get me wrong. That's a great benefit to have. But most group plans have some sort of cap. Now, usually it's around 60% of your income, but that could vary. But typically it's 60%. Now, think about that. Think how that could have an impact on your life. Think about it. Just imagine if you went to work for the whole year and your employer tells you they're only going to pay you from January to August, but January to July, and then from August to December, you're going to work for free. That's essentially what your life is going to be with 60% of the income that you have coming in. Now, understand, health insurance can definitely help the costs of those medical bills, but it won't replace the income that you've lost just from not being able to work. And that's why it's so important to minimize that risk. Now, while we're talking about the concepts of risk, we should also mention long-term care, okay? How many of you, either by show of hands or chiming in, have ever dealt with somebody, or better yet, let me ask it like this. How many of you are currently providing care to a loved one or have in the past? Nobody? Okay, that's cool too. No worries. If you are, typically what will happen is if you are a loved one needs long-term care, the financial, emotional, and physical impact could be profound, immensely profound. So that's something that you definitely want to be thinking about, because it's not just for you, but for your parents and other loved ones as well, right? Most people associate long-term care with an elderly person who needs essentially a nursing home. But the fact is, anybody at any age might unfortunately need long-term care if he or she suffers from any type of chronic illness. For example, rheumatoid arthritis, or even multiple sclerosis, or any disability. It's a tongue twister. Disabling, that's the word. Disabling condition like anxiety or depression, or even diabetes, or any cognitive impairment, such as a traumatic brain injury. Often the care is provided in the patient's home, but that's not always the case. It could also be provided in an assisted living facility, in an adult daycare, or even a nursing home, okay? And understand those prices are not cheap, right? But like here in Hawaii, the average, like decent, like almost unsuitable. I'm not gonna say almost unsuitable. I'm not gonna throw them under the bus like that, but a decent, like middle of the barrel is $25,000 a month. And if you're not properly prepared for that, understand that's gonna quickly drain any financial reserves anybody has saved up. I mean, that's a toll in itself. So that's definitely something that you wanna start thinking about, especially if you're young, because it's cheap and it's easy. And just to reiterate, those are expenses that are typically not covered by most health insurance plans and is minimally covered by Medicare.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So recently I just ran into one of my, I was part of an organization when I was younger. And one of the young ladies that's like my sister, she actually passed away recently. She was suffering from a form of cancer. She
Sorry to
was,
hear that.
thank you, she's probably no more than 34, 35. And she didn't have any insurance. And so we ended up raising money to help our sister bury her. Is it true? Because I've heard this from my mom. Is it true that she was away from work, she was on disability, but during that disability period of you being away from your job, do they still pay for like your life insurance? Like, are you still covered? So like if you, because you're out of, technically you're out of work, you're still working with them, but you're still not covered. They're not paying their death benefits and other benefits that you have out there. Is that true that your company is not doing that? And is this one of the reasons why you should seek other life insurance policies and loan care options?
So great question. And like I said, I'm sorry to hear that. But honestly, yeah. Typically, I mean, every company is different, but for a majority of companies, they're in the market to make money, right? So a lot of the benefits that they provide are going to be with conditions. So, and to a certain extent, like for disability, like a lot of companies will put a time frame on it. So like you could claim disability for the next 3 months. And then after that, you're on your own, right? You got to come back to work or you're going to be terminated. And, that's all within the contracts of, whatever it is that business has. And some businesses offer long-term and short-term, but you also got to understand that that percentage goes up and down. So like short-term, yeah, they might take care of you, but long-term, they're going to decrease that benefit to like half of that. So if it's 60%, 30%, and then if you're also fortunate enough to get life insurance through the company, that's also conditional, right? So, that's conditional on your employment status. So that could also be conditional on whether or not you're pulling from disability. So very rarely have I seen a company offer both, so that if you are on disabled and that disability just happens to be terminal and you pass from it, it's not too routine that I see a company go ahead and pay out based off of that. But I'm not saying some companies don't, but for the simple fact that that's a possibility is why I recommend having your own. Like nobody's going to take care of you better than yourself. Case point blank, it definitely doesn't hurt you to have a disability insurance policy through your employer and having your own, because all it's going to do is ensure that the money that you were making is coming into the household at a higher rate of 60%. Now, granted, it's not going to be close. Well, it's not going to be 100%, but it's going to be close, around 80, 85% of what you were making. But having disability income insurance that's yours, individualized, also allows you to go get another job and still pull disability benefits. So you're still making 80% of whatever you were making, and you have the ability to go out and do something else and make another income. So now you're pulling twice, or essentially you're creating two incomes for the household, which is a benefit of having your own disability income insurance. Now, when it comes to life insurance, having your own doesn't matter whether or not, you're pulling disability and then you die, like that's irrelevant. And most times what would happen is you could actually take long-term care and combine it with your life insurance policy so that it pays out those medical expenses. So like that $25,000 a month, it doesn't come out of your pocket, it comes out of your policy. And you essentially just use all the funds within your policy until it's extinguished. And typically what happens then, typically you structure it so that that policy will outlive the person, so that doesn't happen. And rarely have I seen somebody actually outlive that portion. But typically if they do it, it's typically not a terminal illness at that point. But that's rare, okay? But that's what I would definitely recommend. If, by all means, anybody that's working towards an income or for an income, disability income insurance should be a no-brainer, regardless of what your employer does, because you got to understand the employer is in the business to make money, and there's a good chance if you're costing him, he's going to cut you loose. When I say him, it could be her. There's no bias there, but just understand that nobody can take away what's yours, and nobody's going to look after you better than you are. So definitely recommend getting your own, and if you could afford it, definitely get your buy into the programs that your employer has, especially the 401k. And your 401k and your life insurance policies could be tied together to help fund a retirement nest egg for you. So I mean, there's definitely ways that you could use everything together to help your future self and cover you at the same time. Did we go over this slide? Okay, no, I didn't want to skip over this. So everybody in the room, as we mentioned already, is going to die. Like, that's not a surprise to anyone, okay? That's for certain. It's 100% fact that's going to happen. We just don't know when, okay? And, from Christina's testimonial, like, we already know that it happens, right? We have personal experience to it. And she alluded to some of the financial impacts that it had on the family. Understand that could all be prevented. Now, most individuals will be impacted financially by the death of a loved one at some point in their lives. It's going to happen, okay? So most people appropriately purchase life insurance policies just to protect the financial welfare of those that depend on them. Now, how much life insurance do you need? That's the key question, right? But just like everything else that we spoke of thus far, when it comes to financial planning, the answer really depends on your circumstances. Like what your goals are, what do you want to cover in the event you were to pass away, as far as like not being able to provide your financial support. Because what the common misconception is that life insurance is used to fund a funeral. And that's not the case, okay? Life insurance is intended to provide your financial support to the family in your absence, from where you currently are all the way through retirement. So all the monies or funds that you would have accumulated during your lifetime essentially need to be inside that life insurance policy. So whatever number that is, it could be 100,000, it could be 100 million, whatever, that needs to pretty much be contained in your policy. Now, some things to consider, right? Is there a mortgage? Student loans? Will your children be able to go to college? These are all the costs that you really want to start thinking about when you're looking at life insurance. Because like I mentioned, all the funds that you made throughout your lifetime need to be accounted for and protected. Okay, different types of life insurances offer different type of benefits. And I kind of hinted on it already a little bit, but some even offer benefits that you could use while you're living, i.e., whether it's accumulated value in a whole life policy, an annual dividend that could be substantial, honestly. Like just a little, I guess you could say, for Northwestern Mutual alone, I know that last year we paid over $6 billion to our policyholders in annual dividends. That's unheard of. So, that could definitely be used to help augment or even provide a stream of income, an additional stream of income to the family. Now, you definitely want to ensure that all the questions that we've gone over so far and the ones that you can see displayed on the screen here are definitely the types of questions you want to be asking when you're thinking about purchasing life insurance. Now, the next step, pretty much give. Where would you like to make a difference? Is essentially what this is encompassing. When you have time or money to share with the causes that matter most to you, what people and purposes will you support? The question for the group. Does anybody have any type of fundraisers or any volunteer operations or mission trips or even starting a scholarship? Any one of those seem important to anybody?
Well, we have a scholarship here, More for More. It's the Mary A.
Absolutely.
Moore Scholarship. So we give to college students as well as to high school students, and try to make sure we're educating the students and the parents as well. So I think that scholarship fund to give back to the next generation, I think that is very important.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. Like, you definitely want to do that. And it goes a long way. Now, with your own time and money and support, in order to, I guess you could say it's easier to support others in need, whether you want to help out, close to home, or extend your reach beyond your immediate circle. If time is what you have to offer, you could take a few hours to volunteer in your community, i.e. set up a scholarship or, even do a food drive. I mean, it's coming down to the holidays, Toys for Tots, Thanksgiving, especially now, there's a lot that we could do. I mean, even if your passion is for giving, has a bigger price tag, i.e. a scholarship, you could definitely think long-term, save over time. I'm sure y'all been in the practice, in the, just building the foundation to make sure that scholarship is there for generations to come, and just like how you started your own nonprofit organization, like all that ties into your overall plan. So, there you have the 5 keys essentially of action that you want to take into creating a lifetime of financial security, right? We save, we spend, we grow, we protect, and we give. I think it's important to keep in mind that these 5 considerations apply no matter how much money you have right now, right? It doesn't matter what your goals are for now or in the future or where you are in life, because creating a financial security is a lifelong process. Absolutely. And it changes over time. Understand, it's a living document. And you may pay attention to one specific portion of this now, and then next year it'll change. And that's okay, because understand the goal is to have a balance among all 5. Now, I hope to leave you here today inspired to work on not yourself, but with someone to help start planning. Okay. Know that your circumstances and your priorities are going to change over life. It's going to happen. Life isn't the same. It changes all the time. So just understand that the plan itself needs to evolve too. I can't reiterate that enough. And you can meet each of life's challenges head on if you plan accordingly and celebrate the accomplishments along the way. Definitely don't take for granted the small victories. Whether it's saving $2 every day or making that yearly commitment of, let's say, attaining $7,000 or even 10 grand to help pay off some type of school loans or whatever the case may be. Don't ever overlook your small accomplishments along the way. Now, currently, are there any questions that I can answer? Tithes and offering. Yeah, absolutely. That just popped up in the comment. Sorry, I just saw it. But yeah, definitely tithes and offering. Okay, nothing heard. Now, so if there's nothing else, then I thank you for coming. Definitely appreciate the time that you took to, sit with me and just go over everything here. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask me individually, please feel free. Like, this is my contact information. My name, no kidding. My email address, definitely. If you have any issues or concerns or just have general questions, feel free to reach out through email. This is my website. You could definitely go on there if you want to book meetings or just schedule an appointment. You could do that too. Or if you just want to hop on my calendar real quick, you could definitely hit this link right now, and that will take you to my calendar, and you can just book a time that works best for you. My cell phone number and my social media outlets are all there. So feel free to contact me with anything, and remember, no question is stupid. Financial intelligence, it changes all the time and it's forever growing, right? So you're never going to know it all. So understand this, so no judgment zone. And feel free, like I said, to reach out. Okay. I want to thank